I'll throw something in chat for you here.
I'll just kind of follow along the bouncing ball. I'm good at that too.
By the way, you're broadcasting. Good evening, people who are in the chat, who come to talk to us and like listen to us blabber on about vaping. How you guys doing? Welcome to Attainable Advocacy for, what's the date today? Tuesday, June 30th. Fun times this week. Fun times. So
4 days
we have
till fireworks.
4 days till fireworks. Or if you're in DC, the fireworks all happened today.
Yeah.
So, I would like to welcome to the show Mr. Bruce Nye.
Hello, vapors everywhere.
Bruce is joining Attainable Advocacy as our third co-host, and he is in fact smarter than your average Glantz.
God, that's a hell of a thing to live up or down to. Wait a minute.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure about.
It's a thing. It's a thing. And I'm sorry, I'm being distracted by the feline because he desperately needs attention, like they always do.
There's our
that
fourth
actually
co-host.
sounds like a lot of people in the vapor industry as well.
That's kind of true, actually. It's kind of true.
Yeah.
True.
If the audience numbers keep going down, you can replace me with the cat, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we can put him in a little kitty carrier and put a webcam on that. I mean, we'd have the Reddit crowd on lockdown, right?
Yep.
Oh man, lots of stuff going on this week. Lots of stuff going on this week.
Lots of stuff going on just today.
Just today.
That's true.
My God. Yeah. And
So, where do we want to start, gentlemen? How about we start with, for the folks who have not had the pleasure of talking to you before, Mr. Nye, why don't you go and talk a little bit about yourself? It's like a job interview, except live in front of an audience of 1,000 people.
All right. Well, I started vaping back in September 27th of 2012 as a result of getting COPD. The COPD was stage 2. It is now stage 1. My lung function is a whole lot better, and I vape like crazy. I am a 27-year, after 27-year career as a software engineer, consultant, general, all-around, get-it-done kind of guy. I retired out of that business, went back to school again, and became a registered nurse. I work at a local trauma hospital here in Omaha, putting people back together again. So having fun with that. I'm working right now on getting the chapter of SFATA set up in Nebraska area and having some good success getting people tied into that, thanks to the efforts of not blowing smoke and raising awareness that we need to stand up and fight things like what happened in the news today. Good night. That was something sitting at work going 70% in DC.
And not just on e-liquid, also on the hardware.
Yeah, that's on devices too.
Yeah.
That's on devices. I did a little bit of math on this earlier, actually. For anyone who's in DC, when this goes into effect, and technically, okay, it's all on wholesale pricing, right? And the 70% on the nicotine is supposed to be, in theory, on the nicotine. I did my math a little bit differently because I just did 70% of retail, so my numbers are a little exaggerated. But assuming fairly normal B&M prices for things, a starter kit, an iStick 30, a Nautilus, and a 30 ml of e-liquid, you can look forward to paying about $150 in DC.
Yeah, how many cartons of cigarettes is that?
2.5 at current
Yeah.
prices, from what I was able to find.
So you really want to get that smoker to start vaping?
No, I'm pretty
Wow.
sure that the DC City Council just wants everybody to keep on smoking. I mean, it's more than double the price now to vape, right? So that takes away one of the main reasons.
Actually, what Washington, D.C. has done is taxing non-smokers for not smoking.
That's true.
Mhm.
Yep.
Oh, and since the majority of the population of D.C. itself, once all the Congress critters and everybody go home at night to Maryland, is below the median level of income in the United States, aren't they taxing the poor as well?
Too. Yep.
So wait,
Since
are we saying wait, hang on. So the D.C. City Council, if I remember correctly, is 9 Democrats and 2 Independents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So it's a whole bunch of Democrats taxing people who are of median or lower income, who are former smokers, and many of whom are members of minority groups, which tend to have higher prevalence of smoking.
Right.
So how does this make sense again, DC? I think we need a little bit more than the Cliff Note version at this point.
Yeah, I think you got some explaining to do. Not to put too fine a point on it.
Right. Don't hold your breath while they're explaining.
Yeah. Yeah. You might be not blowing smoke forever.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Chris corrects me. It's actually 11 Democrats and 2 Independents. So it's just more of them.
Yeah. Weren't these the people that they're supposed to be helping, I thought.
Well, that's what they keep telling us.
And since the minorities are the ones that have the greatest prevalence of smoking, then aren't we keeping them smoking too?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's funny.
Where's
how
the humanity? Where's the humanity? Where's the moral justification for that, boys and girls?
Fuck humanity, Bruce. Money. Here's what kills me. This measure was apparently expected to raise $400,000 annually. I think. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong about that. $400,000. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I just don't see too many vape shops staying open in D.C. with 70% tax on devices, because the D.C. metro area has a very good metro system that connects to both Maryland and Virginia.
Yeah.
And if you have a car, Maryland and Virginia are not terribly difficult to get to.
Yeah, and if you have a van, you might not need a storefront.
Right.
Catching always comes before the hanging.
Cash is king, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically what DC has done is ensured that 100% of vape shops that are physically located in Washington, D.C. will close within 6 months or so.
Yeah, and that $400,000 is, well...
that actually goes negative. Because that's not even the... Not only are they not going to get the projected revenue from this tax, they're also not going to get any of the projected revenue from the sales tax from these stores. They won't get anything from any of the people or the storefronts. They won't get the property taxes.
Nor the income taxes, if they have it. I'm not familiar with D.C. whether they have a local income tax or not, but I'm going to venture to guess that went bye-bye from those businesses.
Right. So they're losing more than what they think they're making.
Yeah, quite a bit more, really.
Could we say that Washington, D.C. just shot itself in the foot again?
Again. There wasn't much foot left, but whatever foot was left is now shot off.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I know diabetics with more foot than they've got right now.
Just be glad to be where you're at, because if you were working in D.C., they would be carting the whole of D.C. in on.
You know, Greg...
Could you glue this all back together?
Yeah, Gregory can't talk. Gregory Conley actually made a really good point about this on Twitter earlier today, because the way that the way that it's worded, apparently, it puts the tax burden on the distributor. And I suspect they're going to have difficulty collecting that 70% wholesale tax from Kanger and from Aspire and from whoever they're buying from overseas, because jurisdiction.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering how that's going to work there, guys. Yeah. especially with the TPP being in play now too, huh? I could see that might be a little issue. But
Right, yeah, Owen was just wondering, he's new here and wonders what our thoughts are about the TPP and what it means to vaping.
yeah, I see that, and that's going to be kind of interesting because we've got a few countries that are involved in this, one of which is Australia, and we all know our friends in Australia have some pretty severe problems. We don't know what this is really going to do to vaping.
Actually, I mean, most people probably don't even oversee the unintended consequences of the whole of the TPD and what it will do economically. So vaping's just like a fraction of 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 that.
Right. Exactly. So, what does it mean for vaping? Honestly, I'm gonna have to dive into that a little more for next week, actually, myself, because what I've been reading on the TPP, there are going to be some market requirements, some standards that are going to be put in there as far as who can sell to whom, what the limits are as far as tariffs and the trade. And we're so far down on the list, as Stefan points out, there's a pixel on your screen, and about a half of that is probably the size of this market to the TPP. It's kind of hard to say whether the end result will have an effect on us that's positive or negative. Then again, there could be provisions in it that are quite large. I could honestly have to defer that and read the bill. Read what they've got so far.
Why did the GOP go along with the TPP? Yeah, good question.
Good question.
Well, why did anybody go along with TPP? Right? I mean, it certainly wasn't just the House that voted for it. The Senate voted for it by a majority also.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it seems like we've got a fair number on both sides of the aisle, and you got to figure that the basics of the TPP appear like they will probably be beneficial to large multinational corporations.
I'm shocked.
Of course.
I'm shocked.
Hint, hint.
How is that possible?
Hint, hint, hint. So, I think that's where this is all going to end up for them. Is that going to have an effect on vaping? Well, big tobacco is kind of a large multinational conglomerate of corporations, and there may be some issues there, much to certain fellows in Australia, dismay. Simon Chapman.
Well, you know what though? I mean, in a good chunk of Australia, vaping is already de facto illegal as it is.
Oh, if you have nicotine, I mean, God bless Dr. Dako. If you have nicotine in your possession, you can mail it, you can receive it in the mail, but as soon as you take that bottle out, you have committed a crime equivalent to that of possessing heroin. You go to jail for a very, very long. Goal for a very long time.
Which is kind of insane, really.
Yeah.
I mean, when we look at the relative harms, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's just compare for a second. Nicotine on its own versus heroin.
Yeah.
I'm just not seeing the similar risk factor there personally, but
yeah.
I mean, apparently it's just as addictive, right?
Yeah, well, that's what they keep telling us.
Seriously, I have never had a vapor break into my car to steal my car stereo. Ever.
Hey man, can I get a mill?
I don't know. If they keep up with these taxes, the price of mods might go up.
I can see it now. Hey, do you want to buy a dripper?
Yeah.
I got cotton too, motherfucker.
Hey man, I got some Canthol. It's real shit, man.
This is what drives me nuts about it too. Is when you start looking at some of the unintended consequences of other bills that fortunately have died. But I remember last year there was one legislative session last year, and I cannot for the life of me remember what state it was in. But the way that the language was drafted, all of the tax provisions, or no, I'm sorry, it was a tobacco products definition. Things like batteries and Canthol and, if you really wanted to stretch it, cotton would have actually been defined as a tobacco product if it was used in vaping.
Well, and, there's still some debate open with regard to the deeming regs, because the definition of accessory in that is pretty unclear.
I can't imagine the federal government crafting unclear regulations.
Right.
Has anybody read the tax code lately? I say that mostly jokingly.
I'm 58 years old. I don't have that much life left to begin.
Do you know in fairness to IRS, for individuals that are not doing all sorts of offshore banking and crazy stuff like that, and for a lot of the business stuff, the tax code actually is a lot less bad than it could be.
Well, they're kind of like cigarettes. They're not entirely bad, but have you ever been audited?
No, I have not.
Not in this country, I haven't.
I gotta tell you, it's not a pleasant feeling. Because there's a whole lot in that tax code that you don't realize, even if you follow the instructions to the letter.
Yeah, you're right.
And
but
that's just a personal income tax return.
Yeah, all I'm getting at is like the personal stuff and things like 1099s for issuing them, and IRS actually does okay for the most part. But yeah, I mean, FDA, the entirety of the deeming regs are just such a steaming pile of horse crap.
Yeah.
And Andrew points out rightfully that DC isn't the only one who's got a huge a huge thing against vaping. I mean, we look at I think we talked about it briefly last show. I mean, Washington is still pushing that 95% tax, despite the fact that you have a multi-million-dollar business who's leaving your state because you're stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, Mount Baker, it's not like Mount Baker doesn't employ a whole bunch of people in the state. I mean, that entire issue of taxes in Washington has directly cost the state 135 jobs.
Yeah. I'm going to put this little link over here, maybe if I can figure out how to do this into the chat.
I'm pretty sure Arizona is rolling out a tiny little red carpet.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
I'm thinking they're really going to be happy with those tax revenues, for sure, because that's huge. That's absolutely huge.
And Mount Baker, of course, is an e-liquid manufacturer, right? I mean, they've got to have their entire production facility there too.
Right, which means jobs to build their facilities.
Well, and frankly, if you've got 135 people working for you, I mean, you're not talking about a small office. I mean, you're talking. I mean, I have 135 people in my office, and I work for a pretty decent-sized company.
Yeah, there you go.
So, I mean, 135 people plus all the facilities to properly mix. Well, I mean, it's Mount Baker, so I mean, properly. I don't know. I'm kidding. Mostly. No, but for all the facilities to mix e-liquid in the scale and the size of batches that these guys work in, I mean, I can't imagine it's anything smaller than 7,000 or 8,000 square feet, if not more than that, if not quite a bit more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like I say, sizable.
And they probably have a separate. Yeah, if I had to guess, I would say they'd probably have a separate shipping facility, unless they just have this small compound.
Be interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and they're going to do it all without supply chain disruptions. So there's going to be some side deals out there and other places to store stock, and get it out of Washington.
Yeah. And just to address real quick, I mean, Washington and Minnesota are kind of in very different boats because Washington, they're trying to do the tax on devices as well, so it's on hardware.
Right.
And the 95%, if you've got a decent accountant and you keep good records of everything, the 95% tax is obviously not what anybody wants to deal with, but it could actually be a lot worse. A 95% tax on the nicotine is actually not nearly as detrimental as a 20 or 30 cents a mil tax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's definitely a good talking point, and we'll obviously continue to use it. But in the grand scheme of things, that level of taxation is actually not as bad as it sounds. I mean, it's still more than I would ever like to see. I mean, I'm very much on the camp of, I think that we should be paying sales tax on our stuff, and that's about it.
Well, that's it. The sales tax and the income tax revenue from the business is that's not a small chunk of change, kids.
Right.
And trying to tax extra. I mean, what bothers me the most is that most of these states, like look what happened in Kansas. They levied that tax in there, and the big kahunas down there are all moving over to Missouri right now. My guy here that opened up a shop in Overland Park is moving across the river. Boom, right now because
because why not?
Yeah, it's not a sustainable footprint for them, and the little shops, what are they going to do with this?
Right. Well, I'm thinking about what immediately springs to mind is like Lawrence. Lawrence, Kansas has I think 4 shops, and when I was down there last year, I actually went to 2 of them. Both shops are pretty good. They sell decent stuff. Their prices are all right. One shop was definitely one of the 2 shops I went to was clearly nicer than the other one, but the smaller one was still fine. I mean, they sold out of state stuff, and I'm just looking at it going, geez, you guys are gonna, the folks in St. Louis or the folks in Kansas City have no problem because they just pop across the street.
Right.
But I mean, what do you do about Kansas City? What do you do about? Well, I mean, Kansas City, I guess
Wichita?
you have the same situation. Sorry, Kansas City, you have that situation, but I mean, Lawrence, what are you gonna do?
Right. Same problem with Wichita. I mean, you're stuck dead set in the middle of the middle third of the state. You're not going anywhere, and you've got a sizable population investment at this point. And your margins, for your customers, you're going to have to take it on margin because your customer's price point is only so high.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to those sales going out of the state.
I like this idea. It's never going to happen, but I like this idea. Let's take the MSA funding from the states and funnel some of that to vaping programs. I like that idea.
Let's subsidize vaping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else have you got that's as successful as the dent we've put in the smoking habit?
Well, no, Bruce. I mean, it's all because of no. The smoking rate went down because of taxation.
Well, yeah, I saw our dear friend Glantz trying desperately to swat at those flies, and it's like, really?
You know what? That's another thing that happened this week, and I didn't even list it on the agenda for the show, but I think we're gonna talk about it anyway. What the hell are these guys thinking? I mean, these public health guys have gone completely nuts. Oh well, the rate that smokers are quitting is okay.
Yeah, it's not only okay, but the quit rate is softening. The people that are left aren't the hardened, diehard, can't quit people that we said they all were. They're softening. As more people quit, more people want to quit.
You know,
Really?
I think the only
Have
thing
you
that's
stepped in
softening.
a hospital someday?
I think the only thing that's softening in this case is Stan's head.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, come on. Oh, smokers are quitting fast enough. It's fine. Guys,
what do you expect?
the national smoking rate is still above 15%.
I mean, this guy
Yeah.
doesn't even know the difference between particles and droplets. What would you rather have drop on your head, bricks or water? Apparently, as an aerospace engineer or as an engineer of any kind, not knowing the difference is going to be a bit of a problem. However, in tobacco control, apparently not knowing the difference, yeah, it's just fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, you know, you know what? I can't blame them because they just don't know what's in e-cigarettes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't even keep a straight face through that.
And, you know, because obviously there are two qualifications. First of all, you have to have an absolute zeal against anything that looks like smoke, whether it's smoke or not. And the second is you have to be completely illiterate and incapable of reading research.
That's
You know,
yeah, basically.
Um,
Or at a minimum, incapable of interpreting what the hell they're actually saying. Or even better, looking past the press release and looking at the actual data.
or using the conclusions from a research paper where the data doesn't even support the conclusions that you're using.
Oh, you mean like the
That's
CDC
very
does?
popular. That's a very popular. Oh, Stan's doing it too. I mean,
Well, CDC does that to try and make their case about youth uptake.
oh, well, you know,
I mean,
they don't.
their press release talks about, oh, we're really concerned about all of these youth taking up smoking because they tried vaping one time.
Well, and
Well, the press release says that. What the data says is the complete opposite. Of course.
and you know, it suggests the complete opposite at the very least. But you know, they don't even deal with the conclusions. They don't even look at all the data.
Right.
You know, let's just ignore that. It's an irrelevant data point, and that's a big problem.
You know, here's another problem. It's legislators who can't be bothered to use common sense or listen to any sort of factual information. Calgary, Alberta, which is not my hometown, but it's close enough to it. It's 3 hours away. Calgary just added vaping to its smoking public use ban. Now, I will give them a little bit of credit because they did allow for vaping in shops. Thank you for that, at least. But
It's
I mean, thanks for the consolation prize.
Better than
you know.
Bloomington.
You know what? Why do you have to twist a knife?
I'm sorry, I had to sit through that whole street time thing too.
Yeah,
I
me
had
too.
to sit through it in person, sir.
You're still messed up.
Hey, we can just sit through it in bed with a drink and a laptop and a.
So here's what gets me though, and let me just find this quote real quick because I'm going a little off the cuff here. I need to actually, it was something. It was an article that Clearway posted. But it was one of the Calgary City Council members says that's the wrong story. That's the right one. Diane Colley Urquhart of the Calgary. I will keep wanting to say Chicago. Diane Colley Urquhart of the Calgary City Council. This is a quote for the ages right here. Whatever's in the vaping goes out and becomes secondhand smoke. I can't help but wonder if she has a publicist who specializes in writing product manuals for Innikin.
Holy cow! You know,
There are so many things wrong with that sentence.
I think we found out what happened to all the technical writers that got fired when the .com bubble burst.
Whatever's in the
Holy
vaping.
cow!
I'm sorry. Give me a text version of that quote. That needs to go out as an upload smoke narrative, just for fun.
That's you know, I mean, we're going to have to start getting some awards here for this kind of creativity.
Yeah, the
Guys,
Glantz Awards.
the
Perfect with you.
Glantz.
Sort of like the Razzies, and yeah.
You know, I mean, other shows have their awards. I think we're going to have to start doing the Glancies because, man, that is a sterling example of a steaming pile of.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
I can live with legislators who just kind of don't get it, or who just really take such an issue with the appearance and whatever. I can deal with that. I take issue when it's like willful stupidity.
Yeah, forced ignorance has always been my, I am not prejudiced except against that. When you just put the cotton and take the cotton out of your mouth, stick it in your ears, and go nah 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 nah.
Right, right. I mean, that's the equivalent of what this is, and I don't understand it. I don't understand. Like I said, I can get behind the people who believe, if they believe what public health is telling them about all the risks and whatever else. I understand that. These are people who have been lobbying against smoking for years and years. And to kind of throw out, borrowing from Dr. Yash, I mean, yeah, I understand their skepticism. I get it.
Absolutely. It makes a lot of sense.
But
they've
damn
spent their
it,
lives
use
to
your.
it.
I mean, I just want legislators who have more than 2 brain cells to rub together.
Well, and I think part of that too, it's not just the number of brain cells that they have to put together, but they're getting other numbers because they're getting a lot of ignorant legislators that don't know what vaping is, and so they're hearing their colleagues go, "This is what vaping is," and they're buying it. And there's nothing more of an in thing than having one of your colleagues that you work beside say, "Hey, Jeff, look, this vaping thing, it's got to go. This is what it looks like. We got to stop it." Well, I don't really know much about it. This is all you need to know. So if we're not putting information in the hands of the ignorant legislators who are genuinely ignorant, they don't know, they've got nothing to fight with.
Right.
And they're going to get swayed over to the side, and then they're going to look just as ignorant, and we're going to suffer for it.
Right, and
So-
for the technically inclined here, think of this in technical terms. The legislative process is basically one of garbage in, garbage out.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes it's gold bars in and garbage out.
Yes, that too.
Yeah.
And every once in a great while, it's garbage in and decent stuff comes out.
Yeah. It's
I'm looking at you, FCC. Thanks for blocking Comcast merger.
yeah. Yes, thank you. Now about some of the other stuff we need to talk still.
Yes. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
We still got at least an hour, Bruce. Don't quit on me now.
No, I'm not quitting on you. Let me see here. I'm looking.
Let's
I'm
make
looking.
Stefan talk. Let's make Stefan talk because he's got a fun story about this. Let's talk about Kaiser.
Oh, yeah.
For those of you who don't live in
That was
California
beautiful.
or the West Coast, Kaiser Permanente is actually one of the largest health insurance companies in the United States. They are absolutely massive. They own hospitals and clinics, and lots of people are insured through Kaiser. And Kaiser decided that it would be a fun idea to put out an infographic this week. And I guess I should have probably had this one handy.
Oh, you don't have it handy? You want me
I
to,
do not. Do
batch
you have it
you,
handy?
I have a copy handy, so you can throw it on air. Let me just blast this over to you.
I'm gonna just throw this. Yeah, if you throw it over to me, I'll upload it to Imgur real quick and just make it really available for people because this is a special. This is that special brand of stupid.
We like that.
That's your image.
What's that?
There's your image.
Oh, you sent it over here. Got it. Yeah, screw it. I'll just do it this way. For right now, anyway. I'll save it first, I guess. Okay. 3 reasons to say, wait, this is the wrong. This isn't the one that Kaiser put out.
Oh, you want the one that Kaiser put out? Oh, okay. Well, hold on. Let me.
Let's start with the source.
This is the right one. Whoops. Hey, look at that. Let's not screen share Facebook in general. That seems like a bad idea.
Oops.
Oh dear. we am professionals.
You know what? All I have to say is that I'm glad that it was not set on a couple of different groups, because we don't need like coil porn in the show.
Oh,
I just sent you their version.
I don't know. I mean, we might get some excitement.
Joey just posted it in chat.
Oh, thank you, Joey.
Hey, look at that.
Thank you, Joey.
All right. So, guys, click on the link that Joey just put in the chat. This is the document that Kaiser put out. And Kaiser, I assume, is driving people to, patches and gum and,
of course,
suicide pills and things like that. So, safety concerns, right? Safety concerns. After analyzing e-cigarette samples, the FDA found that some products contain cancer-causing agents and toxic chemicals such as diethylene glycol.
2009 study, bullshit.
Diethylene glycol?
Never repeated. Never repeated.
And that's what I was going to say. I don't recall that being a consistent result.
Nope, that was one cartridge out of, oh God, it's so long ago, 20?
Lots.
And it was never repeated.
Right, a Chinese cartridge, by the way.
Yeah, not even made in the U.S. of A.
But here's the thing. Even if it was made in the U.S., we're still talking about an almost 7-year-old study. Well, actually, when they actually did the study, it probably was 7 years old. Because the results were published in 2009.
Right. Because you got to figure it takes time to get the study together. You got to get the people together. You got to get some funding together, and then you got to throw the whole thing together, do the actual study, then you got to shop it around, see if you can find somebody to publish it. Right. Go through peer review. Oh wait, Carl's talking about that. Maybe peer review. Well, okay, maybe a week.
Peer review. The scientific method that you used is correct. Mm-hmm. However.
Looks good to me, Carl. How about it? Go ahead, publish. There we go.
Well, this is what kills me is, and maybe just a quick segue. Peer review. Peer review is primarily looking at the science that is actually done being correct, right?
No.
No? What is it?
Apparently, it's not looking at the science being correct anymore. Apparently, it's
let's talk theory, Bruce. In theory, the purpose of peer in
what
theory,
the public believes it is.
Right? Yes. In theory, peer review is supposed to be they look at the science that's used and make sure that it's correct.
Yeah. I mean,
even that,
the bottom line is through a series. I mean, first of all, when we do papers in the medical field, we do papers. We design experiments. We gather data. We perform the tests. We get the results, and we've got something interesting. We shop that around. We don't even do peer review yet. We're not even at the point of publishing. We go to our colleagues and say, "This is an interesting thing. What do you think about this?" And so we kind of get a bunch of these things from different places. I know a guy over in Rochester is doing something very similar. You should talk to him. And you kind of collaborate that way, so you kind of get an idea whether your results are even meaningful.
Right.
And once you've got them meaningful, you submit the manuscript to a publication that's got a fairly good board, fairly good visibility, and fairly good attendance, and you're not paying for it to be published. And they send it out to people in the field. Let's say it's a paper on endocrinology, something on diabetes, a new drug or something.
Yep.
And those people then look at your stuff and they actually say, well, we like your results on the face of it, but what was the method that you used to analyze this statistically? It seems like this might be more appropriate. And you take that back and then you redo your paper and see whether those really are more appropriate results, and then you publish this whole thing, the paper, the reviews, and all of that in the journal, and people can look at it. That's the way it's supposed to happen.
But what does it not take into account? What does peer review not take into account?
It doesn't take into account the funding. It doesn't take into account a predetermined result. It takes into account only the experience.
Is it safe to say, and I am going out a little bit on a limb here, but is it safe to say that it doesn't really take into account the study design?
No, it does take, in several places it should take into account the study design.
Keyword should.
Study design is one of the things that you catch in these methods. It's like, did you actually think about the fact that, well, let's look at the PLOS1 study, the mouse study, that said that the vapor coming out of this is toxic to human lung cells.
Yep.
By extrapolation to rats. There was a letter published after the fact where a group of people that have no relationship to the vaping industry whatsoever, and no connection to it at all, they're just straight out of the blue, they took the method, they looked at it, and they said, excuse me guys, your method of measuring the cocaine level in the mice doesn't take into account the difference between mice and men. And so the way you're measuring that effectively says if you're going to get these same results in human, you're going to have to be inhaling vapor every minute, actually several times a minute, every waking moment. That might be a problem. Your method doesn't actually match the results. You could do this instead, and that would be a more accurate measure of what you need to study. You should have made that adjustment. So yeah, method matters. That's part of the review process.
Or at least it should be. It should be.
Yeah, it should be. It's in tobacco in public health tobacco control, it seems to be any method is good as long as it produces results.
Right.
Intended results.
It's even better if it produces the results you want. And if it doesn't produce the results you want, you can make it up by making statements in the conclusion of the paper that have no relationship to the data that you presented anyway. So who cares?
So number 2, getting back to our, getting off my little tangent about peer review. Kaiser also says that there's no convincing evidence that e-cigarettes will help you quit. Do you guys agree?
Well, okay.
Let me find my pack of smokes. Where's my pack of smokes? Oh wait, I sort of left that behind like 3 years ago. Sorry.
Well, and I'll talk a little bit about this because when these are medical people. No, wait, they're medical people with an insurance company interest.
Let me clarify this just a little bit because the context is important. No convincing evidence they help you quit, and they cite a 2014 study by researchers at UCSF.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, and that study itself just supports their conclusion. It doesn't actually. It's not a study on quitting. Again, back to the design and the results not meeting the data that the design wasn't meant to actually capture. But there's this hierarchy of evidence that we're going to start hearing soon. We've felt a little bit around the edges. The systemic review is the capo di tutti capi, the big boss of scientific evidence. We've gone through several studies, we've gone through several reviews, we've looked at all of this stuff, we've coalesced it all into the top of the pyramid where we can be pretty certain that those conclusions are accurate, reasonable, repeatable, reliable, and that becomes the standard of practice. And that is what they're trying to say. There's no conclusive evidence because you don't have a systemic review that says that this is smoking, and then they go ahead and they cite what's considered a level 1 study that's not even a really good controlled clinical trial. Controlled clinical trials, RCTs, are level 3. They cite a level 1 study as their evidence. So I have to kind of laugh at that whole thing because in terms of quality of evidence, they use the lowest quality they possibly could to make a conclusive statement.
Right.
And that evidence in and of itself is bullshit.
Right. So, okay, and we've all seen some of the other stuff that's out there, the longitudinal studies about actually they are at least as effective as patches, if not a little bit better. I'm actually a fan of the study that shows that patches actually reduce the likelihood of quitting.
Yeah, that one was fun. That one was fun. And and here's the other thing: is the data manipulation that goes along. Again, study design. patches are effective in quitting, but when you look out and you see the results, you see them kind of dip down and down and down. And, I'm interested in what's the 1-year quit rate, what's the 2-year quit rate.
Right. I mean, I'd even take 6 months.
I would, for a lot of these things, I would take 6 months as a good starting point. That would show promise. But I want to see the long-term effect.
I mean, pretty much across the board, though. If you look at studies on patches and gum and lozenges and damn near everything else, the 1-year quit rate is embarrassing. Yep. I mean, it's for patches. I think it's 6% or something along that line. Let me rephrase. Unassisted. So there's no behavioral therapy involved. You're just going to the drugstore and buying some patches and doing it on your own. The 1-year quit rate is way below 10%.
Oh, far below. I mean, and there's even some questions as to whether that 6% figure is even accurate. I mean, there's some more evidence, more on the order of 2 or 3%. I mean, that's a 98% failure rate at 1 year. And then of course 30% success rate within 30 days.
Right, but that doesn't matter.
But you haven't gone through a box of patches yet. At that point.
And that's exactly it. I mean, it doesn't matter. 30-day quit rate doesn't matter at all. You don't even have any really. I mean, you have some significant physiological effects at 30 days, but compared to a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, that's the important number. And the numbers just aren't there. And then we have my other favorite subject, bupropion. I find it interesting that they actually didn't list. They specifically avoided listing Chantix here.
Yeah.
Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah,
I don't know, something about suicide.
Yeah, maybe.
Listing a drug with a black box warning. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, that's both of them. Oops.
That's both of them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because for some strange reason, when you bring yourself off of MAOI inhibitors, bad things happen.
Well, and you tend to want to kill yourself or your neighbors or your friends. Yeah, I mean the incidents. I remember when bupropion was renamed Zyban specifically to target the smoking cessation market. And everything was going really good. And then they started getting all these reports of violence, because these things, these drugs, for people who have depression, can be a lifesaver. But I work with psychiatrists a lot because, let's face it, crazy people do stupid things, and the result of those stupid things is trauma to the human being. So I see a lot of it, and I know that it's a very tricky business to treat somebody. You tend to go through a lot of trial and error to find the drug that works for that person. It's called individualized therapy. And they were selling this.
Always works.
They were selling this stuff as a magic elixir.
Yep.
To fix smoking, as if it was one size fits all. And
they still do it that way. I mean, Jesus, we've got both of these drugs are still on the market. They're still FDA approved. They still have black box warnings on them. And Pfizer still settled a lawsuit a few years ago involving 600 deaths of people who just wanted to quit smoking.
Yeah,
that's the issue I have. Now,
and Biker Granny brings up a really interesting point. Have you ever heard of a Chantix meat?
Well, and Pelosi actually made this point a month or so ago that the customer service at a local vape shop is probably one of the best things that helps smokers who switch to vaping stay stopped, because we are a support community. I hate to say it, but we're not just a stick, a battery, a coil, and some juice, but we tend to support each other. I can't tell you the number of times I walk into a vape shop and here comes some newcomer, with their little rig, and it's like I can't seem to stop smoking, and everybody jumps in to help them. You find that at an AA meeting. You don't find that.
But let's
at a Chantix meeting, or your doctor's office.
If we look at, if we look at the vaping community here, in Minnesota, we have a huge number of people that are in the vaping community that work at shops that are in recovery from drugs, alcohol, whatever.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, when you have a support group that's several hundred people, and you can call on just about any of them at any time, there's something about that. There's something to that.
Yeah. Well, and that's why, see, it's not just about lives, in terms of what the regulations and the legislation are doing. It's about our lives too. I mean,
Well, and
you're talking about effectively having regulations that are attempting to bust up the community. That's like making AA illegal. You want a fat number of drunks out there on the road?
Yeah, and I
No.
mean, this is what pisses me off anytime I hear the argument about, oh well, they're not sampling, they're just making it, they're doing it like a lounge. So fucking what? Who cares?
They're not smoking.
We're not smoking. We're out of the sight of your kids because we're in a private business that is generally not accessible to minors. We go there to talk with each other and, compare devices and whatever else, but for Christ's sake, guys, the guys in that scenario is public health and all these other people. I mean, I have lost count of the number of friends that I've made because of vaping.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I watch this all the time where people who, run out of juice or run out of this or that. I mean, they put it up on Facebook. When was the last time you ran out of cigarettes and threw that up on Facebook and somebody showed up at your door with a carton of cigarettes?
A carton. Yeah, I mean,
not just a cigarette or two, but a carton.
We're not even. Yeah, exactly. We're not even talking about, hey, here's a couple cigarettes to get you through. It's here's a $50 mod that I'm not using. Just take it.
Right.
I mean, you look at the vaping community, and we are so different. I mean, there's issues and drama and all this other nonsense that we deal with, but man, I got all philosophical about this a few weeks ago, and I'm not going to do it tonight. But we do, as a community as a whole, we do a lot of good stuff for each other, and I'm proud of that. So, Kaiser thing is not very great. But of course, we weren't going to just leave it at that because they give us such a nice template to use. So there's the other image. Stefan spent a little time the other day and fixed it for them. Are you going to send the bill to Kaiser for design services?
Can I?
I think we should.
No. I'm not gonna. No. That would be all wrong because that would seriously compromise my position. I would, however, not say no to a serious donation to not blowing smoke from Kaiser. I'm fine with that. Yes,
that's fair. Yeah, Kaiser, if you would like to donate to Not Blowing Smoke, just check out the GoFundMe page, and we'll get that set up for you.
We'll talk. Yeah.
So I mean, all joking aside, I mean, of course, we took their model and kind of made it better.
We fixed it, right?
Exactly.
Because Stefan's the man.
Oh God, what was the other great thing from today? We forgot to talk about the other fantastic thing today, and I need to send this. I'm just going to drop this into a message really quick, so that I can easily get it. There was the other absolutely hysterical thing that happened today.
Today has been a great day for vapor news.
This right here is the most damned hilarious thing in vaping I've seen in months. This actually was posted for a good hour and a half.
Yeah, Carl was losing his mind on that. That was just, I want to hire that intern.
I cannot get over how funny this is.
Yeah, Are you sure we don't have minions from not blowing smoke inside of the CDC?
This is just
I am
beautiful.
absolutely sure. No, let me preempt that. We don't.
We don't know anybody at CDC, but I think honestly I think I said it best when it comes to this. I said it best in the Not Blowing Smoke group earlier today. Somebody's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I'm thinking that summer intern has a lot of time for a very nice vacation, because, damn.
Maybe this is what happens if you don't pay your interns.
Well, I think by definition the interns are not paid.
I mean, I'm sorry, but that is truly the funniest thing in vaping I've seen for months, easily. CDC tobacco free links to CASA.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love CASA. I love the message, and I thank you, CDC. You know, we
How much awareness did CDC just raise about vaping by sending one tweet?
Yeah. Oh, and all the other alternatives to burnt tobacco and pharmaceutical
Truth.
solutions. Yeah, there's probably somebody over at Glaxo right now going, "Hey, Mitch, you know Tom Frieden? Yeah, you need to rein him in."
So
yeah, that came across while I was taking a break, and my colleagues were looking at me going, "What the hell are you laughing at?" I said, "I just saw the CDC support the Consumer Advocates for Smoke-Free Alternatives Association in one tweet. I can't believe they just did that." You know, an hour later, it was gone. But
it was seriously there. It was seriously online and posted for a good 90 minutes, though. Which I think was just hysterical. That's so great. So
we're trying to figure out when are they going to send us the bill for the promotion, though, over at CASA. It's like,
next week, Stefan, Danielle, and Camille and I will be at VaporCon West at the Not Blowing Smoke booth that Nick Green generously donated for us.
We have booth.
Yes.
We have booth.
We have booth banners, 4 different ones with nice messages.
Bruce unfortunately will not be joining us because he'll be spending, I'm assuming, his weekend actually directly saving lives.
Yeah. Thursday, Friday off, Saturday, and then on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So that 5 days I get to train interns on how not to kill.
I'll have your drinks.
That's
nice.
You may.
That said, if you are at VaporCon West, please do stop by. We're going to be right by Namber Juice. Okay. As far as I know right now, that may change, but we're going to be in the thick of it. So come say hi, please.
Yes.
You can get shirts. We will have shirts.
Yep.
So we got 2 things left on the agenda. We're making good time. Stefan wants to talk about SB 140 again because it's coming up again. And it's coming up while we're in Reno for VaporCon West.
Yes.
So the fearless leader is going to be having drinks with me while the hearing's going on.
I'll be having drinks while probably being constantly on the phone and. It's going to be. No. The meeting the hearing starts at 1:30. So by the time we're actually there, it's already over. So it'll probably be aftermath phone calls and stuff like that. But luckily, we brought Eric Beal on board as our legislative advisor. The problem with running all the legislative stuff here in California is that I cannot and do not want to be the single point of failure in the entire chain. So having brought Eric on board has been an absolute godsend because he's a capable public speaker. He can take my place that day, and he will be there. However, if we've got anybody in Southern California who is watching, Cutwood is sponsoring a bus. There's 40 seats on the bus. If you want to go to Sacramento and have your voice be heard, make sure you get on the bus. Join the SoCal Spotted group, join SoCal Vapors group, and look up Junie at Elecube because he's handling all this. Otherwise, just contact me, and you all know how to contact me. Apparently today you all made sure that you sent me the message that you knew how to contact me. Seriously, guys, 47 PMs within an hour. I'm not that kind of machine. But we're dealing with SB 140 again, as expected. It's heading to the Assembly Geo Committee. I'm not going to say what our chances are. I'm not going to actually say anything that I shouldn't be saying. But if we're telling legislators how big a support base there is for vaping, and people don't show up, we're going to look like liars. So you all show up.
You could at least say please, jeez.
Please show up.
Please.
Please. No, seriously, guys, it is really important. SB 140 is a really, really bad bill, and the the best chance that you guys have out in California is to show up in force.
Yep.
And make sure, if you have not already done so, send your emails to your state representatives, your state assembly, or your state senators and state assembly members. Give them a call.
Yep.
You don't have to do much. Chances are you're not going to talk to your actual representative. You'll probably talk to a legislative assistant. If you talk to them, if you talk to anybody, there's a very good chance that you get a voicemail. All you have to do is say, "Hey, I would like you to vote no on SB 140." That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to get fancy, write this down. I vape. I vote. I urge you to vote no on SB 140. Write that down. That'll take care of all of the nerves. And whoever answers the phone, say, "Hi, I vape, I vote, I want you to vote no on SB 140. They will start tallying those calls. It's a short call, so the next guy that wants to call will get in. You don't have to say a lot. Just say, vote
the calls end up actually being a little more lengthy because I heard today that a lot of folks are making a lot of calls, and they're asking specifically your address, your name, and they're recording everything, and they're bumping the people, literally hanging up on you when they hear that you're not in their district.
Well, and that's
right, but that's the thing. Call the people who represent you.
Right.
Call the people who represent you.
Right. And
Because
by the way, the other thing people need to understand is that if we've got over 1,400 vape-related businesses in California, and that's absolute 100% vape businesses. That doesn't include all the rest, right? And we're explaining how SB 140 is going to have a very negative economic impact. It's going to have a negative impact on vapors, etc., etc. And only 50, 60, 100, 150 people show up. Legislators who are in a position of being able to cast the swing vote, the few votes that we need to actually kill this thing, they might go and look and go, well, you guys have been telling us about all this for the past many weeks in meetings, and we're not actually seeing that support base. I don't think it's true.
Yeah, I mean, show up one way or the other. I mean, front of the committee makes a great show and really gets the point across. So those of you who can make it, definitely, put the shoes on, put some pants on, get out and go get on the bus.
Hey, you know what?
But
sitting there waiting for a bill to come up could be 10 minutes, could be 2 hours, could be 3 hours, but it's always fun because you get to hang out with a whole bunch of other vapors, a whole bunch of store owners. It's not boring. It's not boring. It's a huge unorganized, semi-organized vape meet.
Right.
With drinks afterwards.
But here's the thing.
Usually.
Even if your representative is not on one of these committees, I would still encourage you to call your representative, because if you get into the caucuses and you start making inroads there, and somebody who maybe is not on that committee, but maybe is well respected in the caucus, if you get in with them and they get 50 calls in a single day, for example, all from people who reside in their jurisdiction, they might go talk to someone who is on the committee, and they try to figure out what's going on. In Minnesota, we had that happen in a big way. We raised a big stink in the GOP caucus here with the 95%, or sorry, the 30 cents a mil tax that was proposed in this past session. So it absolutely is a thing that can happen, but it's going to take you guys to do it. So I would strongly encourage you to get in touch with your representatives, and if you happen to live in one of the jurisdictions for the committee members, even better. So we touched on our last topic for tonight a little bit earlier, but I want to round it out with a little tale from Minnesota this week, and we're going to talk about how poison statistics work. And we're going to talk about poisoning public opinion. So you probably have all at least once so far seen a news article or something that says e-liquid poisonings are on the rise, or in the case of the Star Tribune here in Minnesota, I believe it was e-liquid poisonings or something sends e-liquid poisonings soaring. And you kind of can't help but, if you're the average member of the public, man, that's scary stuff. All these little kids are, getting into e-liquid and whatever else. But what's important here is the data and the context and what that number actually means. So in Minnesota in 2013, there were 46 calls to poison control centers for children aged 5 and under related to e-liquid. In 2014, and this is the news media and State Department of Health press release version, in 2014 this number skyrocketed by 33%. The actual increase was 16. But 33% sounds like a much bigger number. Sounds like it's probably a really big problem. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that small children getting into e-liquid is not a problem, because it is. It does happen, right? And that's why we at least predominantly support child-resistant caps and personal responsibility. Keep the shit out of the hands of your kids. But this is where we get into the how do governments and public health and the media distort the facts? Because the fact is, in Minnesota, that increase of 16, yeah, it's 33%. Yes, that is a valid number. But when you say 33%, the perception, going back to a couple shows ago where we talked about perception and versus reality, that perception is that it's a much bigger problem. The other issue is that they're conflating two different concepts, or really three different concepts, together. The first one is calls to poison control centers. The second one is exposures to potential toxins. The third one is actual poisonings. It's three very different things, right? A call to a poison control center could be, hey, I'm a vapor and I have small kids. What do I need to do to make sure they can't get into these things?
Right.
A call to poison control could also be, oh my god, I DIY and my kid just drank half a bottle of 100 milligram. Now, let me just preface, if you are a DIYer and you have higher concentration nicotine at home, and as unlikely as we all hope it is, if your kid gets into it, do not call poison control first. Call 911, get your kid an ambulance, get the medical attention.
Right. Do not drive them to the ER, call 911.
Yep.
Okay, very important from the trauma guy. You
Because
will not make it to the hospital fast enough. They have stuff on the truck. Call 911.
Exactly. So calls, right? That's one concept. And then exposures. So Hennepin County Medical Center runs the Minnesota Poison Control Line, Hennepin County Medical Center is a member of the American Association of Poison Control Centers. AAPCC offers this exact definition of what exposure means. Someone who has had contact with the substance in some way, for example, ingested, inhaled, absorbed by the skin or eyes, etc. And then goes on to explicitly state not all exposures are poisonings or overdoses.
Correct.
But the press release and the press conference that the Minnesota Department of Health spent my tax dollars on says these are e-liquid poisonings. All 62 of them are e-liquid poisonings.
Correct.
Now, they did at least clarify that only about half of that number actually required medical intervention. But there's still a bit of a difference between an exposure and a poisoning. Because poisoning implies, I think anyway, and Bruce can correct me on the medical definition here, but to me, as a quote-unquote layman, poisoning to me is kind of like saying electrocution. It implies a very serious impact to an individual's health. Versus an exposure, which Chris Hughes made a really great video about this. Chris willingly exposed himself to a bunch of nicotine solution by taking a bottle of 18 milligram and just pouring it on his arm.
Yeah, that is an exposure. Yep. No, you're absolutely right. Poisonings are something that has an exposure which has had an effect on the human. Now, that effect can, with nicotine, most of the effect is dizziness, nausea, vomiting. Okay, you swallow it, you smoke too many cigarettes, you vape too much. If you remember when you were new and you got that 24 milligram bottle of e-liquid and you vaped on it like crazy and you got that is a poisoning. That's what qualifies as a poisoning. Now, serious poisoning is you require prolonged medical intervention in order to stay alive. This is the guy that takes, a half a bottle of Tylenol, and we have to throw a whole bunch of drugs in them, tube them, and stick them in the ICU and keep them alive for 5 days so their kidneys recover. That's a serious poisoning.
Right.
Most poisonings, honestly, the medical intervention is, I saw the doctor, he said it'll pass, go home.
Yep.
Drink plenty of fluids, they're going to shit grapes for a while, but your kid's going to be fine. That is a medical intervention under the American Association of Poison Control Centers.
Right. Medical
and they
intervention.
Actually will break it down by the substance as to, did they require a visit to the doctor? Were they hospitalized or not? If they were hospitalized or not, was it serious? Or was it observational? Were we just watching? I watched a lot of poisonings happen.
But I think
there's no ill effect.
I think that it's pretty safe to say, based on what I know, that even with very small children, again, we're talking kids 5 and under, but I think it's probably pretty safe to say that the majority of those 32 or so, or 31 or whatever it is, are probably instances where the parent took their kid to urgent care, they got checked out, they said,
Poison Control Center was called by the urgent care physician because he has an exposure.
Right. And the urgent care physician says, yep, your kid sure looks sick. He's probably not going to have a good time for the next few hours. He might throw up a few times. But, just give him lots of water and he'll be okay. But, again, looking at the press release and the media coverage, that's not what we hear, right? We hear 62 poisonings. Now, poisonings and exposure are somewhat interchangeable terms, not according to AAPCC's definition, but I can, like earlier, where I can understand if a legislator thinks one thing because of, situation A and B, I get it. Poisoning and exposure is somewhat commonly interchanged these days, especially when it comes to e-liquid. What's not interchangeable is exposure and or poisoning and calls to poison control. These are completely different concepts.
Yep.
And when you as a public health official, especially a government public health official, come out and say that there were 62 poisonings, when in reality that was 62 calls to poison control, not only are you being misleading, you're not doing your job, number one, and worse off, you are really just not even making any pretense of the fact that your concern is public health, truly public health. There's an agenda there. And I'm not trying to get all conspiracy theory, but in the case of Minnesota, we know perfectly well that our public health commissioner for the state does not like vaping. And we know that he has come out and said all the stuff that you normally hear from everybody else. And we know that he had this exact same press conference last year and presented the exact same type of findings, while conveniently ignoring the fact that e-liquid calls to poison control account for 0.3% of calls to poison control in Minnesota for 2014.
Right.
That's barely statistic. And I hate to use this terminology because we are talking about small kids, right? And I don't want to be totally insensitive, but I mean that is almost a statistically insignificant number.
Well, and I have no qualms about saying it, that is a statistically insignificant number, because when we're talking about kids, and I see in chat, now compare that number to something like isopropyl alcohol that doesn't even require any sort of child packaging.
Actually,
I'd love to compare that number. It's actually it's a much larger number, but not compared to the Tylenol that kids get into. And that's the reason I bring it up. That's still the largest poisoning, and that is in a child-proof cap.
Well, here's the funny thing about
kids are poisoning themselves with it.
The funny thing about saying let's talk about comparison data. Well, here's the trick. Minnesota does not publish comparative data in an easy-to-access public venue.
Nope.
We had to go get it through open records. We had to go request that information. They don't even volunteer it at the state level. So in case anyone's concerned or curious, here's the top 10 for Minnesota. Cosmetics and personal care products, of which isopropyl alcohol, I think,
perfumes
fits into that category.
Yep.
Number of calls to poison. Even HCMC is calling it exposures here versus calls, but 2,813 for 2014. Analgesics, Tylenol and ibuprofen, that sort of thing, 2,275. Household cleaning products, 1987. Vitamins and dietary supplements, 1975. This is just the things that are 10% or more. That's the top 5.
Yep. Notice the vitamins are in there. Most people don't realize that vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K will poison you if you overdose on them. You can take too much of those and get very sick.
Antimicrobials round out the top 10. So we're talking about things like Dial soap.
Well, antimicrobials also includes antibiotics.
Oh, okay.
It's antibiotics. That's all those leftover antibiotics because you didn't take them all. I'm going to save a few just in case. First of all, as a nurse, don't fucking do that. Okay, that's how you get all these resistant germs, is you don't kill them all, they just kind of lie dormant and they've survived.
Yeah,
And now, when you get sick again, they start to multiply again, and now we don't have an antibiotic to kill them.
And P.S. That's why hand sanitizer is not the best thing in the world.
Right. Exactly. It's highly overused. You live in a world full of germs. Let your body get used to it. The ones that will kill you, we can probably take care of.
Well, and just as one of those like fun tangents that I like to do, you look at the people who you know that get sick most frequently with stuff like colds and flu and shit like that. My experience, and this is 100% anecdotal, my experience is that the people in my circle of acquaintances who get sick most often are the ones who are the most concerned about germs.
Yep. Well, and the people that I travel with, we're all nurses. We work in hospitals. That's a big building full of all kinds of germs. We don't get sick very much.
It's all that propylene glycol, right?
Yeah. I wish that it was true, but we're actually exposed more, so we actually develop the immunity.
Right.
Interesting thing. I'm looking here in chat because Chris Hughes asked, should I call Poison Control Center when the cap comes off a bottle in my pocket and I dump 20 mils of 18 milligram liquid down my leg, or should I just keep working?
Well, Chris,
all I can say to Chris is that the VG acts as lubricant.
Oh God. I mean, Chris, there's video proof. There's video proof of you dumping 15 mil on your arm and you just kept working. So I mean, I think it's probably okay.
I'll give you the definitive answer. If you start to feel sick, you probably left it on too long. So I mean, it depends on when you spill it, how long it's going to last, how long it's going to be in contact with your skin. I'd probably change. Seriously. Just because I don't like feeling nauseous, like I vape too much.
I would also like to point out that, kind of piggybacking on Stefan's idea, e-liquid probably does not make a good suntan lotion either.
Yeah, and it's not a good sexual lubricant either.
I mean, if we're going to talk about off-label uses, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know sweetening things up down there might be a nice idea, but I wouldn't do it.
Wow. Okay, so here's the other thing. Here's the statistic that I find even more telling in terms of there being an agenda here. And again, I'm not on board with most conspiracy theories, but this one's it's pretty obvious. So we have 62 exposures from e-liquid in 2014. If I take the combined numbers for poison control calls, or exposures as they like to say, for conventional tobacco products and nicotine-based pharmaceuticals, the total number between 2013 and 2014 has been unchanged at 184.
Yep.
Now here's the part where I can write press releases too. Conventional tobacco products and FDA-approved nicotine replacements accounted for almost 300% more exposures than e-liquid.
And there's something that you can do as an advocate. You see this stuff, you can dive into those numbers, and just like Jason did, you can find out the information and then put it in a letter, a paragraph like that. I know you're concerned about this with children, because what legislature isn't going to be concerned about that? After all, it was all over the news, and he's probably getting calls from his constituents. Put those facts in his hands, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I have a way to reassure my clientele, and maybe these people are blowing smoke. There's a side effect of this, and I'm going to dump this into the chat. This is the FDA's latest advanced notice of proposed rulemaking. This is, we're thinking about making a rule, and so we want to get public comment. This is on child-proof caps and warning labels on e-liquid bottles.
Hang on. We're going to propose regulations on these tobacco products that aren't actually tobacco products yet because we haven't issued a deeming regulation.
Right. We're standing by to do the next thing once the deeming regulations hit, boys and girls. Everybody thinks the deeming regulations are going to be bad. The deeming regulations open the door. This is what it opens the door to, and many other things. You can expect an advance notice of proposed rulemaking regarding flavors and all of that. Hasn't come yet, but you can expect it. I want you to all, the folks that are in this, you're all looking at what regulations, how these things happen. Advance notice of proposed rulemaking dealt with this with the FCC, and I dealt with it with the FDA for other reasons that have to deal with building cardiac patient monitors. These are the FDA telling you this is we're about to do something, and we want your input. Now you can bet that poison control centers, like Jason was just dealing with, are going to put their 2 cents in. It's very important for you to take that paragraph and go, this is the truth. This is the thing that matters. And, oh, by the way, yeah, we do support child-proof caps to the ISO standard or to the FTC standard. And this is what should be used. We don't need to invent a new standard for nicotine-containing e-liquid bottles. We have one. And we get enough people in there at the advance notice, they will take notice. And that we've heard a lot about the industry wanting to know how to self-regulate and lead by example. This is the way to do it. This is the way to get out there and say, this is what works. You already know it works. You already know that it reduced the child poisonings from Tylenol, which used to be sold without a child-proof cap, to a far lower level. This is safe, it's effective, it's easy to administer, you have the standards. That's the way to deal with it. Because I can darn sure bet every poison control center in every state is going to put their letter out there saying we've seen a 30% increase in calls to our poison control centers with regard to e-liquid.
Yep, and they're going to say it even in states that have child-proof restrictions already, or child-resistant, I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Falling into that trap. There's no such thing as a child-proof cap.
There's no such thing as idiot-proof because idiots are so ingenious.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like, hey, if you want to design the most efficient process possible, get a lazy person to do it.
That's why every programmer is the laziest worker in the world if he's any good. I used to look at that when I used to hire programmers. If you reinvent the wheel every time, I don't want you. So yeah. So that's where this ends up, and you guys, there's a heads up in chat. Start working with that. Start looking at that. That's eventually we're likely to have some calls to action on that, but you want to know what the next thing is. There it is. Prepare yourself. Study up. Look at what's going on in your state. Search back for articles on nicotine poisoning. Get those figures. Talk about FDA regulated and sanctioned products and how many poisonings occur from them versus how many poisonings have actually occurred. And I mean poisoning, not calls, but real honest-to-goodness poisonings. You will have to do some research, but we have enough time for folks in individual states to get out there and do that and make a difference. So that we don't end up with some invented regulation, and we don't end up with labels on e-liquid bottles that look like cough medicine labels. Because that's the other side of this.
Or that look like a brown paper bag with some Sharpie on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think that we probably have covered everything that we want to cover tonight. In theory, anyway.
Well, maybe just one thing.
Of course.
We shouldn't be the ones to announce this. It should be announced in the next few days, but I want to give people a heads up. I was contacted by Jay Figured, who has a really interesting idea that I really like. We talked for a while, and I said, yeah, no, I want to be involved in that, and I want to get not blowing smoke behind it. Jay wants to put a word out and ask people to record a video of themselves explaining. Let me just grab a bit of text here. Explaining to tell your quit story, how you started vaping, why you vape, how it changed your life, how it affected other people around you, have you helped others, how the freedom to choose vaping without opposition from unfair laws and taxation is important to you, and just record a video of yourself and explain that. We're going to be gathering all those videos as part of a July 4th effort, and Not Blowing Smoke will be creating an entire playlist out of it that could be run in various stores and other places. So heads up to anybody, if you've got a webcam, if you want to record yourself, you want to record your quit story and basically say, I'm a vapor and this is why I vape, get at it.
If you're a shop owner out there and you've had an increase in customers, tell that story too. This is about lives, not money. This is about people.
Right, and the great thing is,
numbers.
Stores could run those videos because those are people explaining their stories. That is not advertising, not marketing. So people making cessation claims because they quit, they're doing it totally honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I think
absolutely.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. And if you're a business saying these customers come in and tell me that this is what's happened to them, and I have thousands of them a month, that's not a health claim. That is a claim about what your customers tell you. You're not making the claim.
Exactly.
Right, so for anybody who needs a little time to pre-script it and rehearse something, go ahead. Here's your heads up.
Yep.
One of my favorite ones is from a shop perspective is simply saying, I cannot count the number of customers I have had say that this has helped them quit smoking. That's perfectly fine.
Yep.
You're reporting what your customers told you.
Yep. Yeah, you are allowed to do that.
You may still get some grief. You may still get some grief about it, but legally, I mean, you're, obviously not a lawyer. None of us are, but you're pretty safe on that one ultimately.
Yeah, you are. You are. So, is there one other thing up in there?
Clearing the air.
Yeah. Thank you.
Clearing
little
the
thing.
air.
Clearing the air. Yeah. Okay. Short story. Group of vendors. Longer story. Everybody who remembers the Curb It campaign in San Francisco, that's quite a while ago. My idea was to do a print campaign, hit San Francisco. Then we started planning that, and shortly thereafter, California DPH did their smear campaign, which is still going on. And all the while, the project started morphing between us and the guys at Sacramento News and Review. And I was so overloaded. The guys there were so helpful to take that off my shoulders, run with it, see how it could be funded. And they got a bunch of businesses here in NorCal and a few from SoCal to get together and put out a print campaign, a 13-print campaign in the papers, and something called a custom something or other.
Custom insert.
Custom insert, right? That insert is now done. It's an eight-page, really nicely done insert that covers a bit of science, a bit of basics, a bit of quit stories, good counter arguments for the fear-mongering, and it's the first actual pro-vaping print campaign. Last I heard, there's interest in other states on taking on this model, taking on the Lego blocks, making some modifications that are local to their area, and running with it as well. And I think between the Southern and Northern California chapter, we're thinking about like just ordering 100,000 plus copies and just selling the boxes to all the stores and blast this out everywhere. And I believe Joseph's in the chat room right now, so thanks for all your help on this. The end result is amazing.
Yeah, I got a chance to look that over, and Boy, there was something that made me want to go grab Omaha World Herald and say, I want to run this insert. Because it is brilliantly well done, and it really it tells the story in the sense of people and what's really going on in what is perhaps the most non-threatening but factual way possible for print media in a newspaper.
Right, and the target audience is people who are not vapers, general public, current smokers, exactly the people we need to reach, and exactly the people who need to hear this, because they're getting their heads pumped full of garbage by California DPH and other such efforts. So yeah, I hope that we've set a standard in California that other places can run with. And you want to be hooked up with this, or you want to investigate, doing your own run, doing your own print work, get in touch with me. I'll put you in touch with the right people.
Amen.
And oh, by the way, it is actually quite affordable.
Hey, Stefan, where's the, I can't find it immediately. Where's the flipbook link for that?
The flipbook link? Oh,
we should put that in chat.
Yeah, we should.
And
I was just going to ask Joseph to put the flipbook link in
well,
chat,
the PDF version is readily downloadable and all that too, right?
Right, yes, I can.
Okay. There's the PDF version. Joseph, maybe if you've got the flipbook version handy, that'd be great if you wouldn't mind linking it, because I think you probably have it more handy than we do.
Right.
We're prepared for our show.
Link, where the heck is that link?
Well, it's in my email, but it's been getting snowed under, especially today. Today's been a really off the charts crazy.
Yeah, when my phone gave up about noon trying to track all of the messages, because it was like,
I found them. Oh.
Darn, I'm working, and it's a busy day for advocacy. So there we go.
All right. And I'm going to put one more link in the chat, because we are very bad at advertising ourselves to a point. This is the YouTube channel for Attainable Advocacy. It'd be really great if you wouldn't mind subscribing. It is youtube.com/c/Attainable Advocacy. If you're watching the replay, you probably are already subscribed, or if you're not, if you'd like to subscribe, that would be really great.
Yep, please do.
You can follow me on Twitter at @vapornot. You can follow Bruce on Twitter at thaumaturgerN. And Stefan, you can follow him on Stefan Didak or a couple of other accounts.
Right, like not blowing smoke.
Indeed. Well, and if you follow the still blowing smoke account, that's sort of we both tweet from that one occasionally.
Yeah, it's sort of confusing for people, but it's nice because we get all these messages on not blowing smoke, still blowing smoke. That's actually the not blowing smoke account, from people complaining about the still blowing smoke campaign. Had this really nice email that I received from someone complaining about how the tune on their advertising is attracting her kid, who just keeps getting attracted to the TV and then gets bombarded with all this E6 stuff. And so I explained that yes, the California DPH is clearly marketing to kids. I mean, that's no question about it, and that we're just as disgusted with as she is. It needs to stop.
And that's the terrible thing. That's the terrible thing about all of this, is that the people who are doing the most to quote unquote market to kids are the public health people, and that's what scares me about all of this.
Right.
They are raising. I mean, the California commercials are so kid centric that it's terrifying. I mean, I was floored when Stefan showed me that email too, because we are literally talking about this woman saw the commercial, her kid had a reaction to it, and she thought she was writing to California Department of Health to complain that her kid was enticed by this commercial. I mean, that's flooring. That is absolutely that floors me. I can't even.
Well, and I go back to the days when I started, which is not that long ago. It'll be 3 years this September. And this was all, amongst smokers, for smokers, amongst vapors, for vapors. And what public health is doing is actually raising awareness to people who don't smoke or vape, but in a way that is not only negative, but child friendly, which is exactly what they're accusing us of doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I have some serious ethical problems with that.
Yeah,
and
it's
the public
not good.
should too. The mom and dad who never smoked, never vaped, who have kids, should too. And we're seeing that they do. They do. So reach out to them. It's like, this was not intended for your kids. And it's the public health department that's making it about your kids. And they're enticing and raising the awareness of your kids. We're not. We're behind closed doors in an 18 over shop.
All right. So, we have now officially covered everything, and I'm doing the aliens pose right now. We have now officially covered everything that we had intended to cover tonight, which is good. We didn't forget anything this time. And we did a little bit of extra. And on top of that, you know what the best part about tonight was? No tech issues.
Yeah. No,
that's because you weren't touching that mouse, right?
That's true. I kept the mouse completely out of the window.
And that is why the cats are so important to the show, because they keep the mouse under control.
Yeah, they keep me distracted.
As soon as he reaches for the mouse, those cats are very highly trained cats. They are distracting his fingers from the button.
Yep, and I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to be weird and like ignoring the show. I was intending to throw a piece of glass in the trash, and it ended up on the floor somewhere.
So you're basically telling us that your aim is shitty.
Yes.
Okay. This is why you're a vapor advocate and not a basketball player.
That is also correct. All right, guys. I think that's all for us tonight. Thank you, as always, for everyone who came to visit. And replay will be up in not terribly long, probably about an hour or so. Feel free to subscribe, follow us on Twitter, whatever you would like to do. And we will catch you again in 2 weeks, Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Right, and otherwise see you in Reno.
Yeah, otherwise we'll see you in Reno. If you're in Reno, come say hi.
Right. Whatever you do, go out and be the light.
Indeed.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Have a great night. Thanks again.